So this time around I'm talking about the New Zealand Organisms Register. I've been involved in the New Zealand Organisms Register since we ran the first workshop in 2005 as a TIFBA-sponsored workshop to see whether this was a tractable problem, whether there was interest and willingness to engage. It turned out that there was, and so in a very short amount of time we had a funded project. That very short amount of time on the scale of change of biodiversity information systems was 3 years, and that was actually doing pretty well. Pulling together a multi-agency project, getting CE level buy-in, one of the biggest projects that TIFBIS has funded, so it's all pretty exciting. I'm now in the role of project manager, supporting the team at Landcare who are leading the development project for NZOR. How many of you here have heard of NZOR before? Okay, well that's fantastic. So we're doing an okay job in terms of communication. You've at least heard the name. So, New Zealand Organisms Register. The problem was that a lack of a national database of organism names and taxonomies meant that individual agencies had to maintain their own lists. So folks like NZOR and DOC and regional councils especially had to maintain their own lists of the something around 100,000 organisms that are of interest in New Zealand. And those change over time, and there's a whole lot of detail in terms of synonymies, the relationship between what a taxa is called now and used to be called, and the splitting and lumping of species. So kind of a big information management problem, and organisms are one of the two, I would say, key connecting things in terms of bringing biodiversity data together from different sources. Organisms and places. Because that's what biodiversity is about. It's about organisms at places. So if we don't know what things are and what they're called, then we're kind of stuck. So multi-agency project to create a central kind of aggregation and distribution service for organism names, involving the folks that you can see up there, data providers at the moment, Landcare to Papa, NIWA, but increasingly, and through NIWA's contribution, Dennis Gordon's Species 2000, about 200 authors of organism names in New Zealand and internationally, and data consumer partners you can see there. Three-tier governance structure. When we first kind of set this up and negotiated it with TIFBIS, that seemed pretty heavyweight. Now we're very, very grateful that we did that because that's resulted in senior level support at MAF and DOC and IRMA and other organisations, support and understanding at the kind of science level, the policy people dealing with organisms, and at the IT level as well. And obviously, you know, it sort of seems intuitive when you say it now that just because you tell one person in a big organisation something doesn't mean that the message spreads. And in fact, we were communicating 3 different messages. So that process has gone really well. We're just at the end of the first year of the NZOR project, first year of a 3-year project. And you can see there, aligned with international projects a lot through the contacts and efforts of Jerry Cooper from Landcare Research, EU Framework 7 project, the Atlas of Living Australia and other Australian national infrastructure projects, and with GBIF and Electronic Catalogue of Life and Species 2000 Global. So you can probably tell by now that I like making pictures of systems. This was sort of the picture that explains NZOR, which is that NZOR is a thing in the middle that holds names, holds taxonomy, and it holds basic biostatus. I'll explain that in a minute. And it sucks data in from data providers at Landcare, NIWA, Te Papa, and potentially some other smaller providers as well. So it's not the single source for the data, it's harvesting data and it's harvesting changes as they come through from those systems. And then it's consumable in a number of forms from organisations like Math Biosecurity, bringing in kind of a local copy of the data that they're interested in, and that being used kind of as a data dictionary for their various systems that have to maintain organism names. For them, that's very much about the nasty things that we don't want. For DOC, that will be about that, but also all of the native and introduced species. All the way up to being able to browse a website and a bit like the plant names database, you can now look up a name or download a spreadsheet of the current names for a particular group. Biostatus, kind of a little bit controversial, but basically because we want to put in, or because Math Biosecurity and other folks need the names of the nasty things that we don't want here, we need to, if we're saying, putting a name in NZOR, we need to say what its biostatus is in relation to New Zealand. So that will be basically present or absent in New Zealand according to what source of evidence can we. Go to the next slide. Dan. So through year one, hit most of the milestones in year one, fairly significant progress in terms of setting up the governance structure, doing requirements analysis, building the initial NZOR cache, importing NAF data from their biosecurity risk assessment database, doing a big data matching exercise of that against Landcare and Species 2000 sources and international sources, and starting some work with Math Biosecurity on integrating the technical proof of concept of integration of NZOR services into their environment, and requirements analysis for hooking that up in a more complete sense to their BRAD database and other systems. And we've got NIWA hooked up with consuming their names as well. So current status is that the steering group and TIFBIS have submitted a recommendation to Al Morrison, GM of DOC, that funding for years 2 and 3 be approved. And so fingers crossed, we're hoping that that will come through pretty shortly.